Hello YouTube, I'm here with a XEROX 6020 Memorywriter typewriter. I got this at a swap meet for about 20 bucks a month or so ago. There were several things wrong with it at the time. These things are pretty rare and there's not a lot of info available for them online, so I thought I'd share with you what I learned about it. In this video I'm going to disassemble it, talk about cleaning, testing, repair it. I'm not going to talk about the user features. I might do that in a future video. I've been trying to get a hold of the manual for this thing, which is very hard to come by. Okay, and a disclaimer, I'm not a pro at repairing these things or anything, so I wouldn't even call myself an expert. I'm just a guy who likes tinkering with some electronics. You might want to check the comments, hopefully, if there's anybody who owns one of these and I've screwed something up, they will talk about it. Okay, let's talk about testing this. If you are buying or selling one of these things, there are a few things that you should check. Let me turn it on. Obviously you want to make sure that it comes on. Carriage moves around a little bit. First of all, you want to make sure that the print wheel and the ribbon are actually installed and whatnot. You can pull that back. There's the print wheel. This is the ink ribbon, and the correction ribbons are these two things on the side there. Power it on. Let me power it on again so you can see what happens here. You'll see there it lifted the ink ribbon, it lifted the correction ribbon, it spun the print wheel, and then it moved the whole carriage left and right a couple times. A little while later it beeped, and we got the lights going on the bottom there. There's a couple tests that you can run that I highly recommend. The first one we're going to do is a print wheel test. Let me close this up again. We'll feed a piece of paper in. Feed a piece of paper in landscape mode. Just pull the paper switch here all the way. Briefly, the whole thing the paper will load. Okay, and then to run the print wheel test, hold down the code button. It's this little one that looks like a green paper clip. And the shift key. Hold those down at the same time and press the 3 button. And what's happening now is it's printing everything on the print wheel, along with a little bit of information like the ROM level for this thing. Let this run, print out a couple of lines, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So we'll let this go. This will go forever if you let it, I think. So we're going to press the stop key over here to stop that part of the test. It'll stop when it's done with this line. And now it's printing characters, I believe, at the two extremes of the platen. We're going to stop that also because it's been printing on the platen there. Okay, and then I'll advance that, and you want to look closely at the output here. In particular, you want to make sure that all the characters are there, and you want to make sure that they're there on every line. Now, the reason for that is when I got this, I had a print wheel. This is the print wheel. And let me bring it up here a little bit so it'll zoom in on it. This print wheel looked fine when I got it, but once I started using it a little bit, as you can see, the spokes came flying off. Some of the ends of the pedals came flying off, and that became apparent once I started printing out the test there. So you want to run that test and make sure that the print wheel is all in one piece. Pull the print wheel out also and take a look at it. Those are about, I think I could get those online for about 15 bucks. There's a battery in here that stores phrases and forms and margins and all that kind of junk. You probably ought to test that. It's fairly easy to give that a test. We're going to create a phrase and then make sure that the phrase is still there when we're done. So if I remember how to do this right, we'll hold down code and this key with the plus minus and the degree. It says phrase there. I don't know if you can see it, but we'll do that. Whoops, let me zoom out on that again. Okay, and now it's saying down here, it says enter title. We'll just say TY. And create. And we will type. Thank you. And then we're going to hit code and phrase again. And that creates the phrase. Okay, what does that mean? It means if you hold down code and phrase and type TY and insert, it will print thank you. Ooh, boy, isn't that exciting. Okay, now what we're going to do is turn the power off. Turn the power back on. Let the thing start up. And now let's see if that phrase is still there. There it goes. Okay, code, phrase, it says enter title. We'll type TY. And now this button here says insert. There, now you can see it a little better. Press the insert key. If it works, and it did, you'll get thank you type printed on the paper there. Okay, that tests out the print wheel. It's good, 15 bucks. The pads under here, those cost you $20. The battery, that's another 10 bucks, I think. And in my case, the battery had actually corroded some of the traces on a printed circuit board, which in fact caused the thing not to boot up at all. But we'll get to that later. If you run those 3 tests and everything works out okay, then it's probably working fine. For the next test, let's check the correction ribbon. I'm just going to type hello here. Okay, then I'll lift this up. This key right here actually does the erasure. And that's looks like it's working fine. Let me just zoom in on that a little bit for you. And as I press that, you can see it erasing the words. The key that you're looking for is to make sure that the eraser ribbon rises up when you press the correction key. Those correction ribbons are, I think, about 6 or 7 bucks. Okay, last test, very important one, is the keyboard test. To run this, press and hold the code key. It's that green paperclip looking thing. Hold the shift key and press the auto return. Press and release the auto return key. You'll see now all 5 LEDs are flashing. 2 here, 1 there, 2 there. And now as we press each of the keys, you'll see, if I zoom in, you'll see a 2-digit code come up on there. It doesn't really matter what the code is. I mean, it matters, but basically, if the key works, you'll get the right code. What you want to do is you want to try every single one of these keys on here. Press all the keys on the top part here. These 4 guys here, I guess there's 5 of them. Oh, by the way, this slider here is the contrast control for the display. So you want to make sure that's okay. But you want to get every single one of these keys because sometimes they fail. Including the caps lock, the space key, all those guys. Now, if the keys in the main keyboard here fail, that's a pretty easy fix. Anybody can do it, typically. There are these little pads underneath that disintegrate and have to get replaced. If the keys on the piece up here, the ones that kind of click when you type them, anything along here where my fingers are, if those fail, you're going to have to replace them with keys that have to get buttons that have to get soldered in. That's a little more difficult. It's not hard, but you're going to have to work with a soldering iron. And one more thing: once it's in this mode for the keyboard test, you can't get out of it. You have to turn the power off and turn it back on. All right, I'm just about ready to start taking this thing apart. I apologize for the dog barking in the background. First things first, of course, turn off the power. Don't want to get yourself electrocuted. Unplug it also, since you're going to be inside there. There's live wires. There's very few tools that you actually need to work on this. A Phillips head screwdriver with a fairly narrow bit there. 1/4 inch hex wrench. 5/16 hex wrench, and The only other thing I found that I really needed was a T9 Torx wrench for working on the getting the carriage off. But for a lot of stuff, you won't even have to take the carriage off. Other things that I use, something flat to help pull the keys off. That's not too bad. You might need tweezers to do some operations on the carriage. For oil, let me find it. For oiling this thing, I use something that's probably pretty unusual. I used Concept 2 chain oil. This is used for the Concept 2 indoor rower. They did a bunch of research to figure out how best to lubricate the chain, and they came up with whatever this stuff is. They really did it right. They basically oiled the chains, ran them for, you know, a bazillion years or whatever it was, and then measured the chains to see how much they had stretched. And this oil apparently far outperformed everything else. It's very thin, so it's pretty good for just about anything. Anyway, that's what I used for oil. Other stuff, isopropyl alcohol. Use the 90% if you can. Lacquer thinner for cleaning the platen. Don't get lacquer thinner on plastic. It'll soften the plastic. And of course solder if you're going to replace capacitors and stuff. Okay, we've got the thing turned off. Let's open it up. First thing you got to do is remove the platen. And to do that, there are two... let's pull this. Actually, first let's get the print wheel out. There's a little thing there that you pull forward to get the print wheel out. To remove the, I'll just get that centered and zoomed in a little bit for you. To remove the ribbon, there's a little clip here. Just pull that down slightly, lift off the back, and then the ribbon comes off the front. I got a blue ribbon, pretty cool, huh? See that? And the correction tape, I think I'm not going to try getting the correction tape off. It's not really hard. You push down on the side and slide it out slightly to the end and then pick it up. But I think I won't bother. Okay, first thing you got to do is remove the platen. We'll get that forward, and then there are two little clips on the sides here. Hang on just a second, and I'll get that zoomed in for you. This little clip here, that's a spring-loaded clip. There's one on the other side also. And I'll zoom out. You gotta basically push both of those in. That one in, push that one in, and then the platen will just lift out. Oh, probably ought to slide that up first. And that's it. Platen pops right out. Looks pretty good. To clean this, I used lacquer thinner. I saw that on some of the other sites. Just a little lacquer thinner on a paper towel or a rag. Work it in. Like I said before, be careful not to get any of that of the lacquer thinner on anything that's plastic. It'll melt it. Okay, next, to get the top case off, there are four bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to use the larger of the hex bolts, the 5/16 hex bolt. So I will just go ahead and take those off now, and we'll get the cover off. All right, those are out of the frame. Now to actually get the cover off, you got to make sure that the paper bale levers are kind of in the right spot so you can pull this off. But it basically will just lift right off. One thing I found with this case, all these pieces here, all this stuff up here, this flops around a whole lot. You may want to consider removing it. Be careful you don't want to break the plastic. One other thing, this guy here, this black piece here, it had a piece of foam on the inside, all along the inside there. I think it was maybe sound deadening, maybe it was just like an air filter, but it totally disintegrated once I started washing this. As with lots of other stuff in the mid-80s, this was covered in cigarette smoke, every single inch of it. So I basically put this whole thing in the sink and just washed it with a little mild soap and a sponge. Okay, now the top case is off. Let's take a little tour and see how this thing works. The guts really is the part that matters is the carriage here. Slides back and forth there, as you can see. There's a little print hammer here. It's kind of cool because the hammer works directly onto the print wheel. Let me put the print wheel back in there so you can kind of see how that all works. You just slide the print wheel in and then push this forward. And you can see how the hammer hits the print wheel there and forms the characters. Slides back and forth, goes up and down. Driving the carriage is a motor here, which drives the carriage belt there. You can see that going back and forth if I push it by hand. You can push that by hand when the power is off, but not when it's on. On the other side here is another motor, and that drives the platen up and down. I took the platen out so you can't see it, but there that is. In the back, let's take off this electrical shield here. This whole thing is just a shield. I'm just gonna pull that off. It just pulls right off. You just gotta be a little bit careful with it. It's a little tough one-handed here. There we go. There's that. There's that. He comes right off. In the back, if I can move the camera around to the back here, there's a printed circuit board across the top there, a big-ass transformer, printed circuit board across the top, another one along the bottom. Those basically seem to drive the carriage and the motors. I suspect they're the same on all of the 60 series typewriters. All the guts, like the user features and whatnot, they're all inside the keyboard here. There's a main board underneath the keyboard that looks like it's responsible for the memory and the features and all that sort of fun stuff. That's about all of what's going on in there. Let me just check my notes here. Yeah, one other thing. The 6020 has a couple expansion slots. If I lift this up, maybe we can see underneath there. There's a slot there. There's a slot there. And I had a little bonus behind that slot. I don't have an extra hand, but behind that slot is a spelling checker module that plugs into the main board. We'll see where it plugs in later. So check those if you have one of these. Okay, that's the tour. Once you have the top case removed, there are basically 4 assemblies here. One is the keyboard here. The whole thing comes off if you disconnect this bolt, this one, and this one. The whole keyboard will come off, as you'll see later. You just have to disconnect this grounding key here, cable here, and the keyboard cable here, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's down in there. But you'll probably want to remove the top part of the keyboard first. The reason is, once you pull the keyboard assembly off, there's a printed circuit board underneath, and you want to be careful with that. The second assembly is the carriage assembly here, and as you can see, I'll pick this up a little bit. That whole thing comes off fairly easily. All you got to do is remove the this electrical screen here and disconnect the cables in the back. You'll see how to do that, and then that just lifts right off. The third assembly is in the back here, and that's power and control to the carriage. That comes off with this bolt, and the 2 on the other side. There are also some grounding straps that you have to remove. One there, which has broken on mine, and a similar one on the other side. But basically, it's those 3 things. It's really the easiest thing to do if you need to work on something, just remove it and work on the assembly by itself. I did a lot of work without doing that, but thinking about it after the fact, it's probably easiest just to freaking remove the assembly.